And welcome back to State and Local. I have another candidate here today. Oh, by the way, I'm Anne Marie Battistone, and you're watching Norfolk Public Access. I have another candidate with me today. This is Jay Talerman, who is currently the moderator. He's the incumbent, and he is facing the challenger, David Rosenberg, at the May 3rd election. So he's going to talk about what he's been doing as the moderator and whatever else he might want to say. Oh, thank you for coming in. Now, tell me. Now, have you done anything since because you've been moderator for 2 years, but you were assistant before?
The deputy town moderator, right?
In
case of conflicts, correct.
So, have you had any appointments that you've made to the advisory board?
Yes, I've reappointed several people who've been doing great work there. And I've appointed a few new faces as people have either resigned their seats or just to have some changeover. So there's some new faces and some old faces, and I think about half of the advisory board now is new.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So they have a 3-year term.
And they're staggered terms, so they don't all come up at once. So every year, 3 or so of them come up. A couple of them have told me, hey, I'm not interested again, or I'm moving out of town, or I've done it for 2 terms, pick someone else. The people have been dedicated to it and been doing a great job. I've had no quarrel with reappointing them whatsoever.
Now, do you wait to see if somebody comes forward and wants to be on it? If you've got somebody that still wants to stay on, what do you do about?
Well, people have come forward and they have talked to me and said, I'd love to serve on this committee. But it's also, in the same token, I've also been faced with a resignation from the committee, and I haven't been able to find anyone. I've had to ask several people and literally couldn't find anyone to fill the spot, and so it went unfilled for a little while. So it's been a little mix of both. Right now they're full, and I'm glad for that. I've looked at a few people. There's going to be more appointments coming up this spring when terms expire if I'm reelected, and a few people have asked about it. And I'll go through the process. I'd like to know what they do. I'd like to know what their interests are. I'd like to know if they have experience in financial matters, especially financial matters affecting a municipality. And then I just go with my gut.
Because a long time ago, Frank Gross appointed me, and I think he wanted, I was a teacher, and I think he wanted another woman. But I have to say, I was in completely over my head. And they, and I sat down with people and tried to understand the terminology and this, that, and it was just, and then finally, I think after a couple of years, I just said, I'm not doing anybody any good here. I was completely lost.
Well, and municipal finance is even getting more complicated since you were on it. So I look for a couple things. If you're an accountant, you're a natural, or if you have a degree in economics or that's your field, that's great. But also, I would love a teacher to step forward, because if you think about it, 65% or more of our entire budget in this town is education.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Huh. So if a teacher or someone with an educational background who knew the economic parts of it too was interested, I'd be very interested in that person because they could speak to it. For example, a couple years ago, we had a gentleman who lived in town who was a police chief in another town. He's since retired, and he's also left the advisory board as well. But I thought he was valuable to the advisory board and reappointed him because at the time we were going through the potential and now the real project for reconstruction of the police station. And what better person could there be to assess whether or not it was a good investment or not a good investment? So I look for those things. We have people who are interested in open space, purchasing open space. And because that costs money, I'd like that person could be valuable too, because they could understand when we want to make a recommendation to spend several $1,000,000 on an open space parcel or not. So that's valuable to me too. So I look at all those things.
Do you try to look at the overall composition and see if it's sort of balanced with people that are fiscally more conservative or less conservative, or people that are more, more concerned about open space and people who think that they really don't want to spend the money on that?
I really haven't, and for a couple reasons. One, even though I have my political leanings, which we won't talk about, and everyone has their political leanings, I don't think it's relevant to this. I want smart people. And in fact, I know that most of the advisory board, and in fact, most of my appointees probably vote in a party that's not my own, but they're smart people and I value their input. But more than that, I don't think the labels of fiscal conservative or Democrat or Republican really apply when you're talking about local taxation. I mean, at the end of the day, the advisory board makes decisions in terms of recommended budgets. Mm-hmm. There's no kind of taxation that is as close to a dollar for dollar proposition than local property taxes. Mm-hmm. When the state taxes you or when the federal government taxes you, the money goes through so many other hands. And so it can get very political. But when there's a local property tax, it really stays local. That money stays local. So I've often found that even the most conservative of people might be the most pro-KP people and be willing to throw a ton of money at King Philip or Norfolk Public Schools because it's their kids.
I see.
And there's no bureaucrat somewhere far away stripping that money away. So it's really the most direct form of taxation. So I think it really defies political labels and economic labels.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, so I've never seen, in my experience, not only with our advisory board, but with all the finance committees and advisory boards in all the other towns that I represent, hardcore politics get into it.
Oh, okay.
So people that suggest that, don't vote for him because he'll only appoint crazy conservative people or crazy liberal people, I don't, in practice, it doesn't really work out that way. You appoint smart people, they do a great job, they love their town, and they make smart decisions.
So you do, though, try to avoid somebody who, say, like who really didn't have any knowledge of municipal government and economics and debts and all of that.
It really depends. If I felt that we were heavy, like let's say we had 5 accountants and they were brilliant and they could crunch numbers and they knew all the terminology, but someone was stepping up that really had a great interest in, say, the open space side of it or the zoning things that they review, then I might take a look at them too. I mean, I don't have a litmus test.
So you would balance it in that sense.
That said, if someone comes in and has no willingness or ability to start to learn those economic concepts, then they're going to flounder. It's going to be difficult for them because so much of it, one of the things I'm doing this year, I tried to do it last year and we're going to do it this year, it's going to be available at town meeting, is a glossary of all the economic terms that they talk about. So you'll see the finance committee or the advisory board.
That will be in a hard copy?
It'll be a hard copy.
And that's a wonderful idea.
So when they start talking about move to appropriate from free cash or from the stabilization fund or that, people can flip through their cheat sheet, so to speak.
Great.
So I've wanted to do it for a long time. Now that I've been moderator, we're implementing that. I also am publishing that is going to be out there, kind of the rules of the road for town meeting, what to expect, what are main motions, what are subsidiary motions, because you go to town meeting, you see me rule on motions to amend, and it can get complex. I try and explain things, but having the hard copy available is something that myself and the town administrator really think is important this year, so we're going to include that.
I'm surprised they haven't done that, because that should be a fairly easy thing to access, those definitions.
Oh, for me it is. I mean,
and then someone obviously, puts it down on paper. But I mean, with the internet, I mean, of course, this was like 20 years ago, and there wasn't any website I could go to or even think to go to where I was asking people and they were saying, well, it's this, it's that, and it was just a piecemeal kind of thing for me.
Right, and to me, though, there's nothing like having it in your hand. So when someone says, well, what the heck's a stabilization fund?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. It's the rainy day fund, and that's why we would put money into it. Oh, I get it. Okay, I understand this motion.
Now, did you have to write these up, or were you able to pull some of them?
I pulled some of it, but because I wanted to get the definitions down into plain English, so I would take some of the statutory language and I changed it into plain English. So when you go to town meeting this year, you'll see I tried to make it. Some of it you just can't distill into completely plain English.
Sure, well.
But that's one of the things I've really tried to do. I mean, you see me at town meeting, I'll try and explain things. When someone makes a motion to amend or seems confused about their motion, I'll say, what this person's trying to do, just so everyone understands, is this. Or I'll say to someone, I think it happened at last year's annual town meeting, I don't think that's what you want to do. If you want to do this, let me help you through the motion, and I'll do that. So, I mean, that's really important to me. I think that because I'm a municipal attorney and because I go to about 15, 20 town meetings a year in the towns I represent, I have enough experience to help walk people through it. And it's been kind of gratifying for me to hear people say, oh boy, I think I'm now finally understanding town meeting, or I've been away from town meeting for years, but now I'm enjoying it again.
Right.
You know, we're always trying to get the numbers up, but in the 2 years that I've been doing this, I'm pleased that many people have stepped up and said, hey, this is a pretty well-run town meeting. We're out of there before midnight. I understood what was going on. You crack a joke or two. You make sense of things. You know, thanks for what you do. That's been gratifying, and that's why I keep doing it.
Now your opponent talks about attendance at the town meeting. Was there anything that really can be done about that? I mean, because that was kind of an issue for him that he thought was very important. Was to get, I don't.
And I think David's goals along those lines are altruistic.
Oh, definitely.
Look, I would love it if all 6,500 registered voters came to town meeting. It doesn't happen that way. I think that having been to many, many town meetings across the Commonwealth, our attendance per capita is a little higher than average. I'm pleased with our attendance. Would I like it to be even higher? Sure. But attendance is a function of a few things. In a town that is primarily a bedroom community, which Norfolk has certainly developed into, and you have a town meeting at 7 o'clock at night on a Tuesday or a Monday, it's just really hard to get working people to come. So that's a function of it. I try and make it easy. I try and tell people we're going to get out of here before 11, to make it attractive to them. But it's still hard in these bedroom communities. Now, on the Cape, where there's a lot of communities where a lot of people are retired, the attendance can go way up because these are people who are retired, and it's easier for them to go. So I get that's one function of the attendance. Another function of it is that you have to have something that draws people in. I guarantee if we had, say, a big override for schools or something like that, there'd be a heck of a lot more than 250 people. But there's an ebb and flow to that. This year at the Springtown meeting, I've seen the initial draft of the warrant. It doesn't appear that there's anything particularly sexy or provocative or controversial on it. It's not going to be heavy attendance, not because people aren't interested in participating in town affairs, but because between kids' sports and busy work schedules, if they don't see anything on it that directly affects their lives, they're so tired at the end of the day, they might not come.
Didn't they try Saturday at one time?
Oh, when I first moved to town in '95, we were a Saturday. A lot of towns, there's very few towns left that do Saturdays. I represent one town that does Saturdays. And the problem is you get worst attendance. Kids sports. You're in May. You will not use shopping, kids sports. That's the one day of the week. So I think there's that ebb and flow to it. The other thing I would say to David, and again, I believe his goals are altruistic.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Is that, hey, I've been at this for 2 years, and people are already saying that they like town meeting again. There are people that haven't gone in 4 or 5 years, not since the Frank Gross era. And everyone knows that Frank was awesome. He was entertaining.
Really
people loved him. And, for whatever reason, whether
that
they're busy or another, it was indeed. And now they're coming back. So I think we're trending in the right direction for attendance. But again, attendance isn't just like we're having town meetings so people will automatically come. They have to want to be able to come. They have to be able to come. There has to be something of interest to them on the warrant. If we don't have like a big zoning issue or a big capital purchase issue or something that really fires them up, well, it'll be a quiet year. And then maybe next year it'll be a busy year.
Now, wasn't there also a time when they were not announcing the order of the questions? Because I know people used to come or they'd watch on TV and then they'd run over and vote and leave. Am I right about that? It seems to me I remember that. Well, and then I thought that they didn't want to reveal the order of the questions so that people couldn't do that. They couldn't say, well, look, this is going to probably be...
Some towns have first of all, the selectman and not the moderator determine the order of the
And what
questions.
do we do here?
By law, the selectmen control the order.
Okay.
You can, by a bylaw, we could pass a bylaw, as some towns do, and essentially put them in that, the bingo thing.
Yes, right.
Where it would come out that way. We don't have that. Very few towns do.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm thinking of Medfield.
Where you would mix it up. But if you put it on a warrant, and there's nothing that says that it gets mixed up by the moderator, then it goes in that order. Now, next week or in a week and a half, there's going to be a pre-town meeting, which I do by our own bylaw every year.
And who goes to that?
Well, someone from the advisory board. Anyone can attend, but it's really a meeting for myself. Anyone who's presenting an article.
Kind of like a dry run type of thing?
Yeah, we don't even go through all the articles. I mean, we do go through all the articles, but we're looking for areas of where we can kind of measure how much discussion's going to be. And very often at that meeting, and it will say, hey, might it make sense to move that one up in the order? Let's get that one done earlier because I think there'll be better attendance earlier. Or maybe that one should come later when people get off of work and can get there. So there is some of that discussion. That said, that's the selectmen get to make that final decision. I'm just there to kind of get them through it in that order. So the selectmen have been terrific in essentially working with me and with other people on the advisory board to say, hey, I don't put that at the end, put it at the beginning. And it's been a very cooperative relationship between all the various stakeholders at town meeting. So we try and do it the best we can, but ultimately the selectmen determine that.
Now, this is going to sound like a crazy question, and I think I asked you this 2 years ago. What's the story with, I know there were some discussions down the years about the mics and who goes where to which mic.
Yeah.
How is it set up now?
So
there's a for and against?
2 moderators ago, the moderator set up a for mic, green, a red mic, against, and a question mic in the middle, and you had to go to one of those.
Okay.
And then the next moderator carried through that tradition. I've been going to town meeting every year, and I felt, and I think it was pretty evident, that it was like literally dividing the room in half. There were fors and againsts, and I thought it was dividing Norfolk into this, and people felt stigmatized. God, I always go up to the red mic. People are going to think I hate everything. And I thought it was stigmatizing people as for and against. So one thing I did, and I announced at the very first town meeting that I presided over, is no more red-green mics. You go to whatever mic you want. I will try and balance it. So if I get a bunch of fors in a row, I'll say, is anyone against this article that wants to talk? We've had a lot of people. So I'll try and balance it that way so that we get a good balance of it. But I don't want to put labels on people.
And so is there still a question mic?
No, you can ask a question from any mic. Whenever you want.
Okay.
Raise a point of order, ask the selectmen a question, ask the advisory board, the planning board a question. You can do that from whatever mic you want.
People would tend to go with the closest mic anyway, but you're right. I can see your point that
it was clear to me that some people were, that person is going up to the red mic again. Here we go again, and that's just not right.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. Yeah. Now I have another question. What about? Could you talk a little bit about controlling the meeting, as opposed to letting everybody have their say and ask their questions?
So there's always a lot of balance with that. Our town recognizes, as most towns do, a motion to call the question or cut off debate or whatever they want, so people can move to do that at a certain point in time. So that's one.
And they vote on that then?
Yes, but I also have the right, and I actually helped draft that bylaw for the town when I was on the bylaw review committee. I have the right to reject that. So let's say it's a controversial matter, a big construction project, and a couple people speak against, and then someone moves, I move to cut off debate. When there's a whole bunch of people that clearly still want to talk, I'll say, listen, I'm going to reject that. You know, even though you have a right to make that motion, I want to hear from a few. I can tell that people want to talk, because I'm out there looking in the room, I can see people raising their hands, so I reject that. The other thing I do, because it's important that everyone speaks, but it's also important that we get through the business in a reasonable period of time. So if I hear the same comment over and over again, we have time limits at the mic too. It's usually 5 minutes and 3 minutes. Although if someone really needs to go over, I've never cut off anyone really. If someone really has something important to say and they go to 6 minutes.
But that's a tricky thing too, because some people are very long-winded. I know in some meetings that you go to, you just say, is anybody going to get control of this?
You have to use common sense. So the law says that the moderator has the ultimate discretion of whether to cut someone off. And I usually if someone has something important to say, I want to hear it. And I think town meeting wants to hear it. If I think that they're repeating themselves, I'll say, okay, can you wrap it up? And people usually do. They're usually respectful in that regard. We even have a limit of 2 times at the mic. That's in our bylaws.
Oh, okay.
But if someone gets up a 3rd time, I'll usually let them. David Rosenberg, who we know gets up to the mic 15, 20 times a night, sometimes 3 or 4 times on a particular article. I let him do it.
Right.
He wants to ask a question. If he doesn't linger at the mic too long.
Which he doesn't. And he's very insightful. No, he always sits right down.
And that's fine. So I want to give people their time at the mic, and they do that. And, some people say, why do you let him talk so much? Because it's an open process, and people have a right to talk.
Absolutely.
Now, if I hear 5 people in a row say the exact same thing, I'll say, okay, anything new out there? Before I hear the same thing again, anything new? I think we're ready to move on. I've heard both sides. And I've heard now we're repeating ourselves, and I'd like to get to the vote. If anyone has something new, please come up to the mic. But if you're just going to say the same thing, I think we get the picture. And occasionally people say, well, I wanted to say the same thing too. And they say, why didn't you let me speak? And it's a balancing act. Is it perfect? No, but I also want to make sure that if possible, we're home by midnight.
Yes.
So
I think you ran a candidates night. Aren't you? Don't you usually moderate the candidates night?
Well, I do. I did last year because I was unopposed.
Yeah.
This year, I won't run it.
And I think I still had a question out, and I asked you about it, and you said, "Well, I thought we had discussed that enough."
Yeah, I think the candidates night was always difficult because I get a stack of cards that we could be there for 4 days with, and I try and make sure that we move it along. Again, those nights are separate and apart from town meeting. What I'm always trying to do at that night, if I'm doing it, is to make sure that there's a good cross section of questions. Because we've got planning board people, we've got selectmen people, we've got board of health people. I just want people to get a quick flavor of their various candidates and move on. So that's different. Town meeting is actually a legislative assembly.
Right.
Where we're actually taking votes on things that will hit your pocketbook or change your zoning or create a bylaw that are important things. So those things I have to make sure that they get fully vetted, but still done without going into like 3 and 4 hour debates.
Now, do you see the visuals, the videos, or whatever's put? They're not sometimes videos, but do you see those things ahead of time yourself? What they project up there?
Well,
or do you just know that it's going to be pertinent to the?
So the basic PowerPoint that they do in terms of just showing the article and the motion, I don't really see those because we've already gone over those. But if someone has a presentation, for example, in the police station when it came up, they had a presentation at this pre-meeting that we do. I asked to see those ahead of time so I know how long it'll take. And if it's like a 50-slide presentation, I'll say, guys, we gotta cut this thing down to 15 slides or something. Let's distill this thing to its essence. So I do like to see the audio-visual stuff if people are going to present that, whether it's the selectmen or the planning board or someone who's petitioning an article. So.
And who chooses those visuals, other than the person that there's a presentation? You know, when the screen comes up and there are different things, who picks the pertinent charts and
well, you know, if it's the budget,
it's the department that's involved.
Yeah, and I think the town administrator and the board of selectmen, if it's an article that they're sponsoring, they're largely responsible for that for the most part. But it could come from any source. Could be the planning board on a zoning thing. Could be we had a committee that did that worked on the police station, and they put together with Jack Hathaway's help. But so they did that. It could come from any source. I just want to make sure that it's not going to be, I try and keep it to 5 minutes. You know, if it's a really big project, it's obviously going to go over 5 minutes, but I try and keep things moving. I think one function of the attendance question is you got to keep it moving. If this becomes a 4-night town meeting, or we have 45-minute debates, then no one's going to come.
Yeah,
I guarantee
it's true. I remember when they would have those.
I've
night
seen
after
that,
night.
and so one of the things that I think my experience as a municipal attorney provides is that I know how to keep it moving. I'm not suggesting David doesn't, but he's never actually done this. So yeah.
Well, I know I imagine that. Yeah, it's something sort of specialized. And speaking of moving, we've just about run out of time. So.
Okay. Well, that went fast. That was great.
So listen, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And so then I'm going to be not me, but everyone's going to be voting on May 3rd. My guest today was Jay Talerman, who is the incumbent running for re-election for town moderator. And we're going to have some more candidates coming in, so I hope you'll look for them. I'm Anne Marie Battistone, and thanks for watching State and Local.
Thank you.